My grandmother's niece, they lived in a very old house. It didn't even have a hard floor, it just was dirt. And they had like these two strings, like rope, and they had it in a nice slip knot, perfect for these rabbits' feeds. And they would hang them upside down while they're still kicking and jumping, and they'd gut them, like cut them right in the abdomen, and still alive, you know, their hearts would be beating, and they would just gut them right there in front of us, you know, and then just pull the skin down, just like whoosh. I mean, you would literally hear it tearing from the muscle, just not a pleasant sound to hear when you're a child. Then all you would see is just this naked looking corpse. It went from a big fluffy rabbit to a tiny little skinny naked looking rabbit. And then that's when they would take it out and wash it and throw it in a pot and make like a stew. Interesting things that I've eaten. Is it eaten or eaten? Eaten in my lifetime. Has to be squirrel brains. We used to eat those for breakfast. That was my grandfather's favorite dish. They would go and, I guess, hunt for a bunch of these squirrels to get a full breakfast out of it, because I guess they're, you know, how they're tiny. It's the same process as in, I believe, as in they kill it, and then but besides skinning the squirrel, I'm not sure if they ate the meat. I'm pretty sure they didn't, because she never mentioned that. But they would just decapitate the squirrel because they just wanted the brain of it. My grandfather just wanted to eat the brain of it, so I'm guessing they would cut the head off, cut the head meat enough to expose the skull, and then the skull can't be no bigger than like this big or so. It can't be very big, so I'm guessing she either took a knife and cracked it open like that and then put it in with the eggs, or she smashed it with a hammer, or she smashed it with something, and then she mixed it in with the brain. She would scramble up the brain. She told me she used to scramble the brain and stick it in with the eggs, like scrambled eggs, and do it that way, and then throw it in the frying pan. It would be mixed in with the egg. It wouldn't just be a little brain. What you're imagining, like a little brain just sitting on a frying pan? No, I don't. It's not like that. It's like I'm guessing it was like a grayish matter, all smashed up and then mixed in with the eggs. And I'm guessing when it was cooked, it turned white or something. I was like 3 years old. It's not food per se, but I did eat it. And my brother, I have two cousins that we lived on the same road. And one of them was my age, and his brother's a year or so older. So the younger one would play with me, and the older one would play with my brother. And we used to get these little brown bags from the corner store, which was like 2 miles. So I guess it's not really the corner store, because we would get to fill them up with penny bubble gums. So we just liked to collect the bags because they were so tiny. And my brother and my cousin, I guess, snuck out and filled up the bag full of goat poop. So they're acting like they're chewing on it. He said, "Do you want some Arabian roasted peanuts?" to me and my cousin. So I don't know how old we were. We was under 10. Stupidly thinking that they were actually chewing on these peanuts. Me and my cousin put them in our mouth and start chewing on them. I'm like, this don't taste like a peanut. And I remember I was like, I spit it out. I didn't trust him anyway, because I knew my brother lied. But I thought that he ate it. Gross as you would think it is, but it just because, you know, they ate corn and grass and things like that, so it's not like it's, you know, horrible, really stinky. Like you're thinking poop, but I just remember it not tasting right. It just didn't taste like a peanut. I remember my older brother, of course my older brother again, he would say, if you eat worms, if you eat it in your diet, like they're pretty healthy for you. They got a lot of nutrition, la la la. And I stupidly believed him. I don't remember what it tasted like. I just remember the soft, squishy, chewy. It's almost like it sticks in your teeth and like bubble gum. It was actually a shape of a snowman. Our great-great-grandmother gave it to us. She was still alive. And it had candy in it. So when you emptied it, it became like a little collector jar. And it had a cork. So this is coming from someone who would take that jar and fart into the jar and cork it really fast and keep it on his bookshelf. And we would watch this thing for months, and it actually turned the glass green. And then one day, I don't even know how long we even let it fester in this jar. I mean, the whole side of the jar just turned putrid green. So he had this bright idea again. Let's open the jar and smell it. So I was like, okay, listening to my brother. And we opened it up, and it was so powerful. It literally knocked us down. I don't know why. He just comes up with these crazy and sick ideas, and I stupidly went with it. He had diarrhea, and he didn't know that if you drank a lot of water, that would make it worse. But he used to drink gallons of water, and I don't know how he come about finding out that he can shoot his diarrhea from one end of our house to the other. We would all sit on the porch, stand on our porch. It was like a big, long porch my dad built. And of course, I would just stand away because I didn't want to be squirted. But it was me and my two cousins. We would literally just stand there and watch him. He would pull his pants down, squeeze really hard, and his diarrhea would squirt in a fine line. I'm not joking. From where he was at the end to the end of the house. I don't even know how many feet that is. It was so far that we was just so impressed with him shooting his diarrhea out. You know, what next thing is my brother gonna do? It was okay, because it was my brother.
It's been 10 years since this happened to me, and I think it's time to tell everything. He volunteered as a school counselor, and he was from the same country as I was, so naturally we're connected. He did notice that, I had feelings towards him, so we did terminate our relationship for 2 months. And then somehow we just ran into each other and one thing led to another. I named him Goodbye. Goodbye. Because it's goodbye. I said, Mommy cannot have you. Please forgive me. But I will have you when I can later. And I tried to feed it very good food, even though I was gonna kill it. And I try not to think too much about it. Yeah, that was that. And I'm very sorry about so sorry to this baby. I'm very sorry. I called him and I said, we need to talk. Just very simply, we need to talk. It's something serious. And he knew. Like, we just sat in the car for a long time. And we didn't talk. And when I looked at him, he was crying. He was so weak. I was stronger than I had ever been, because I had another life inside of me. I really wanted to. I couldn't have this child because of who the father was and who I was, and my parents didn't know about this. I mean, oh God, they don't even know about it now. And there was absolutely no way that I would have this child. There was just no way. I knew it would hurt a lot, but I think it's the least I can go through, because it's killing a life. But however you see it, it's killing a life. And I want to experience the pain. I need to go through this myself. I told him that we should never see each other again. And that he should go back to his wife. I thought I was going to die. I passed out maybe 10 minutes into the very excruciating pain. And I was yanked out of my doze because of the pain again. And then, I don't know how long later, maybe just a minute later, I passed out again. Then when I woke up, I noticed that everything I have on, night clothes, were drenched in sweat. And I had bitten myself, like right here and right here. And I didn't even know how much I had bitten. I did bleed a little, but I know that the cramps did not mean that I was going to have a lot of blood. The blood would come later. I don't know, I just so relieved to pass out for the night then. And it was like the darkest, this nothingness. Just the deepest sleep, like I was dead. But I woke up. And nothing, no mass. I was like, did something happen? But I didn't call him. Went about my day in the house. Around noontime, I went to the bathroom to, pee. And then it came out really naturally, like your period. But it came out. It's just like your period, but I never should have done what I did then, which was to look at what came out. Because it was blood mostly, but you can see something, you can basically see a little figure. You can see little arms. Limbs, not arms, just limbs. I never should have looked because it was so horrifying. It was like, I killed that. I made it. I made it and I killed it. Should I flush? What should I do with it? That's what I have to live with. I wish I'd never seen that little... I flushed eventually, and I don't know what else I could have done with it. I still believe that this baby exists in Seoul somewhere. Deep down, I have no regrets. Had I the same life again, I would do the same thing.
You know, in my 30s, well, actually, my middle 20s, early 30s, I shouldn't date myself. I hate to say how old I am. 54, soon to be 55, so I have a little history. And this is back when I had a libido, and I think that's how you say it, another word for sex drive. The most incredible thing is I fell in love with a sailor, and I'd never fallen in love with a sailor before. I always wished that I was a hippie. I had read this book by Ginsberg, and if it wasn't by Ginsberg, it was some kind of beatnik, and he talked about his lover. He had a black lover with flat little feet, and I kept thinking, oh, my feet are fat and flat. I was young at the time. I was like 15, and I was like, oh, I'd love a beatnik boyfriend, you know, like someone so romantic and kind of cool, into jazz and, you know, that stuff. And so when I saw Tom, it just hit me. It's like everything I had ever dreamed of, you know, and he was so beautiful. And he was a light, creamy color with, you know, gray blue eyes, and he was tall and slender. He was like 6'1", and he towered over me, but he was so sexy. And he had this long, gray dreadlocks and kind of frizzy, kinky dreadlocks, and they were just so beautiful. And he had a tam on, and he wore it on the side, and you know, he always had these eyes like this. And I had the whole island helping me meet him. And I was a street vendor, and the other street vendors would tell me, you know, when he was expected to come to town, because he was also a dealer, you know, and everybody smoked marijuana. And so I just remember my friend Jocelyn coming to tell me, he's here, Tom is here. And I just remember him breezing by me, and he said, oh, I'll be with you in a minute, baby. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, he called me baby. And it was kind of like, you know, a cool baby, you know, something a beatnik would say. He probably knows everything, that I have this huge crush on him. And so anyway, we got together, and it was right during zero tolerance. That didn't sit too well with the island, where, you know, half the island, you know, smoked. And of course, Tom being a dealer and loving to smoke, it created a kind of rebellion. We used to go out on his boat and just smoke spliff after spliff, and you know, I'd almost be sick from marijuana. No more, no more. And they say, you don't believe in zero tolerance, do you? So I'd force myself to, you know, take a little hit every other time it passed me. Although boats would come around now and then, the Coast Guard, and you had to be good. You couldn't be smoking a spliff right in front of them. Enough is zero tolerance. I want to get into an incident that happened. And I want you to be kind to me, because, you know, I'm bearing my soul, and I've constantly tried to forget this, but it somehow sticks in my mind, and you might agree it's something that should stick in your mind. I used to call when we were out in the middle of the ocean, like nowhere zone, and it was just so beautiful. And I remember we had smoked a lot of marijuana. You know, I became a marijuana junkie just hanging out with Tom, and I just remember kissing and, you know, and just like the so romantic, like shedding my clothes and he was shedding his, and we were just, you know, I was just so confident. We were out in the middle of nowhere, and, you know, it was really beautiful. And I remember him, you know, I guess he had to do something sitting down, and so, you know, we were just like going at it. So we were basically sitting up, and so we were visible. It was something that should have been taken out of a novel. You know, you can tell I'm a romantic. I'm never really tied into reality. But then, right in the middle of screwing, a ferry boat came by, loaded with people, and we're on the top of his boat, screwing our brains out, telling Tom, stop, stop, we have to stop. And he was like, oh no, baby, don't worry, they can't see us. But I just remember the ferry coming by, and it was dead on, and it was only like a football field away. So maybe it wasn't even a football field. I want to believe it was a football field, but it was probably closer. And there was no one on deck, and all of a sudden I see all these different colored shirts on deck, and it was all men. It was all men, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these men just came swarming out of their seats below the deck, and they were all lined up looking at us. And I would just, you know, Tom was uncontrollable at that point, you know, and I kept saying, stop, stop. And he was like, honey, we can't stop, you know, this is too good. And I was like, oh my gosh, and just seeing those men, and I was like totally petrified. Oh, to use a pun, screw this, you know, just when you think you can be by yourself in the middle of the ocean. I guess that old saying, no one's truly alone. There's always something, somebody. I just said no to everything, unless it was like below deck. And even though it was a small island, nobody ever came up to me and said, oh, I saw you screwing on the boat that time. Now I feel guilty. You know, there's like a guilt that sets in, and, you know, why did I do that? And, you know, why was I even with him, like someone that had so little respect for me? And, like, he didn't even want to stop, you know, he's just interested in his own, you know, like, pleasure. And some of that is tied to, like, how he treated me, too, like, remembering the whole relationship, how he just took off. So he pops back on the island, St. Thomas, about 2 months later, and he says, oh, baby, I've just been to Jamaica. I was just like, does he think I think that's cool? And so I was just so hurt. It must have been his makeup date. He took me to this beautiful field. We went on a little hiking walk, and I believe it was on the west side of the island, and it was just beautiful. Rolling hills, kind of dry grass from the sun, and even though it was like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, the sun was still bright enough. And he just started picking these mushrooms, and it was like, hey, you can eat these, baby. You know, I can't pass it up, you know. I was a little bit of a rebel myself, and so in a very sedate way, in a New England way, okay. I just started picking these mushrooms and eating them. And, you know, I ate about 3 or 4, and then, you know, there's nothing like fresh food because the effect was immense, and it was almost immediate. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am like really tripping, and, you know, I just don't think I can make it out of this field. And he said, Miss Mary, and he never called me Miss Mary. It was like he was putting on this kind of like 50s charm, like Leave It to Beaver charm. And as I said, he was like 20 years older than me, so he was kind of from a different era too, and that's what made him so romantic too to me. And so, you know, I just said, I don't think so. And I just remembered the words came out even before I could think about them. And I just said, no, that should have been a secret. That should have been something I kept to myself. I should have said, yeah, we can take it slow. That's about it of my Tom era.